Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Foots the King. Now, you guys may know the faces on the screen, but in case you don't, I have Marcus Mosher with me. I have Landon McCool. And these are two people that I literally were listening to them before I was watching them. They do a great job with the Locked On Cowboys. And, Marcus is an established writer. He does great draft work. And I just got to say, I think Landon probably, if you're talking about a guy who can break us, anything down, and like he does the best of that really in the community as far as like the details. No.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I'll never forget when Landon said sweaty Dak. And I never thought about
that's
it.
Marcus. I'll give Marcus full credit.
Also, we got to give Marcus flowers on that?
We got to give Marcus flowers on that. I'm not taking credit for that brilliance because that really was.
Hold on. Before we start,
yes,
you said that you might recognize their faces. I doubt that. There are a lot of people that don't think I look like my profile picture on Twitter, so I got to push back on that a little bit.
No,
really.
Let's put words to it right now. Okay, most people on Twitter think that Marcus is black because Marcus has the Mike Tyson, what is it?
Profile picture,
right? Profile picture. So
Yeah.
there are so many times when we pop on shows or I'm with Marcus on something. And they assumed that Marcus was black because of that. So it's always funny whenever folks see Marcus for the first time and they're like, "Oh, that's what Marcus looks like."
Well, what's funnier, that or the fact that I was named after a running back? Because that's
the ultimate irony. Yeah.
So we got sweaty Dak. Marcus is white, and he was named after Marcus Allen, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yeah. So the irony is not lost on me. I will say that.
Well, I'll tell you this, Marcus. You can come to the cookout anytime.
There you go.
You're black.
Appreciate that.
That's great. Now you got the invite.
Now you got the invite. So listen, these brothers do great work. Like seriously, guys. I'll be honest. I get topics sometimes from them. It could be one thing that they said, and I'm like, "Yo, Landon spot on," or Marcus. Marcus with the draft stuff and knowing what he knows in that realm is really cool. And like I said, yesterday I had Zach and Vach on. And just bringing the community, I really want to live in that world. And so with these two guys today, they said, I was like, yo, nobody's talking about it, but we kind of have, they kind of have. So this will be good to get this on this platform. But I wanted to talk about Brian Schottenheimer, the pass game offensive guy, or I'm sure they have a pass game offensive coordinator, it's Ken Dorsey. But like, what will this offense look like from a pass game perspective? And the reason why I'm doing this, guys, is, and we're going to set this up with two questions. Last year, Dak Prescott as a passer wasn't great. And we just have to call a spade a spade. There's going to be people who say, Foots, you're being too hard. And so the question that I want to ask Marcus and Landon, let's take it back to last year. Do you have any concerns? We'll get to Pickens, we'll get to everything, but do you have any concerns about Dak as a passer? And I want to frame it like this, Marcus. Was it scheme? Was it personnel? Was it Dak's ability? What say you that, Marcus Mosher?
I think it's a little bit of everything. Because I thought we saw moments of Dak playing really well last year. Like, think of that last drive that he had against the Steelers where they go the length of the field. And they have backup guards. I think TJ Bass was in the game. Zach Martin left early. Tyler Smith didn't play. Like, he had some of these games where he played really well down the stretch. But also, if you remember that Pittsburgh game, I'm just picking that game out, he had multiple interceptions in that game on like first down where he did not need to force the ball. I don't know if it was because the defense was so bad earlier in the year that he was pressing a little bit, whether it was the lack of weapons and maybe that contributed to it. CeeDee Lamb didn't practice all of training camp, as he dealt with, the contract stuff. I thought there were moments where he played well, but I did think it was time for a change. And that's why I'm excited about Brian Schottenheimer. It's because this is a new voice for the locker room, but it's somebody that Dak knows well. But I think the fascinating thing is we don't really know what a Brian Schottenheimer offense looks like because Mike McCarthy is completely different from Pete Carroll, who Brian Schottenheimer coached under before. So I'm really anxious to see what it ultimately looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think Marcus nailed it. I mean, I think the big thing is kind of triangulate like what's, it somewhere in that area of Dak's talent and the talent that's around him and the play calling, the scheme that's supporting him. I think that Dak in general, I mean, it's funny. We talked about sweaty Dak early in the show because I think what happens is that sweaty Dak shows up when he doesn't have the options that he needs to solve.
Can you define sweaty Dak?
Yeah,
maybe
yeah, we should. That's a great point. Yeah, we should. Sweaty Dak is the Dak that shows up when it's all on the line. He doesn't have this is in my opinion. So you should chime in here, Marcus, if you disagree. Sweaty Dak shows up when it's all on the line. So big time playoff games, big time opponent games, and he doesn't have the answers that he should to solve the problems that are being presented, and he's overcompensating and trying too hard. And that's when you start to see the way you start to see sweaty Dak is the way it manifests itself is he starts throwing the ball hot, right? Like he'll ended up throwing the ball high. You see it early in these games. And if he doesn't get kind of early options to kind of help him get into the rhythm of the game, it can stay for, sometimes a whole half of a game. You'll see it. But I think
I'll just add real quick.
Yeah.
You see this. I came up with this like pregame, that the Tampa Bay playoff game, the first one or the second one, where the Cowboys ultimately won. You see Dak in these games like warming up, and he is drenched in sweat, right?
Yeah.
And he comes out, and I think he's so amped up, which is a good thing. Like he gets fired up for these playoff games, and you go in, and there's just a lot of like pent up energy and some nerves. And I don't necessarily think that's always a great thing for your offense. Picture Tom Brady like warming up before an AFC Championship game. He's cool, he's calm. It's like it's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think Dak gets a little bit too hyped up for these big games, and it has an impact on the way he plays.
Yeah. And then once he gets a big hit, like that's when it seems like he settles in. Yeah. And so suddenly he starts playing elite again. So that's, I think the key to me is avoiding situations where you're forcing that. And I think that the way to do that is to make Dak feel comfortable in the offense that he's operating around. Make him feel like he has answers. Make him feel like it's not all only on him. And I think that the one iteration of this offense that we haven't successfully had Dak in these playoffs is he's had these games where he's had passing weapons before, the appropriate amount of passing weapons to win. The issues that we haven't had one of these games where he's had a running game that he could turn around and lean on in these kind of playoff situations of good teams. And I think that's where Schottenheimer is trying to kind of guide this team to not only have the passing attack that we've seen that Dak has had success with, but also to add that extra dimension of the running game as another thing that Dak can lean on when the offense is struggling early in playoff games.
Because it would be really nice to go into these playoff games and be like, we're just going to run the ball 11 times in the first quarter and just kind of ease into these games rather than like the Packer game where you get down 7-0, 14-0, and now it's a game where Dak's going to have to throw the ball 65 times. Like, that's just not good for anybody, no matter how well we like Dak.
Yeah. And just to be clear, you guys don't think it's an ability thing or his any skill are diminishing, correct?
No, I mean, I think if anything, Dak, I think Nate Tice has like some of the best descriptions of Dak. I think he really kind of gets it. I think Dak is best described as a robot playing quarterback. He makes all the right decisions when he gets the opportunities the inputs are correct. He does what he needs to do. And then when things get tight and he has to improv, he can do that as well. But I think the problem happens when you're over reliant on Dak making you right. I think it's good to have that ability to tap into Dak, improving or, making it happen when it shouldn't be happening necessarily. But you can't build an offense around that. You need to limit those chances to make Dak kind of, make magic happen only when you really need them, not just on any random third down when you're playing a team that's lesser than you. That's why you build an offense around a quarterback so you don't have to rely on him to just create magic to convert a third down in the middle of the season against a lesser opponent.
And by the way, it's not that Dak has played poorly in the playoffs. I mean, he's had some bad games, but it's not like the playoffs are his kryptonite. He's been fine. I think we're just trying to find answers, and I'm sure the Cowboys are doing the same to make Dak's life a little bit easier when you get into these big games in the postseason, so he doesn't feel like everything is on him.
Yeah, if anything, it's Dak is reacting to everyone else failing him, right? It's like the defense giving up 14 points on the first, 2 drives, or the offensive line not being able to block anyone, or the wide receivers not able to get open. And then Dak feels he has to overcompensate for that. That's when things start to really kind of roll downhill, when things are already going badly, and Dak is trying to overcome all of that by himself.
Wow. Great stuff, Marcus. Great stuff, Landon. And listen, Dak Prescott, 73-41 as a starter, over 175 touchdowns, 66.5 completion percentage. Dak he's beyond a game manager. He's great at the line of scrimmage. He can get the picture. He knows where the ball should go. And the reason why I even brought this up, guys, so I'm going back, and this is how I'm framing the season. I'm watching the Cleveland game, then I'm watching the Washington game, then I'll watch the Giants game. So I'm watching it and then trying to meet in the middle. And what I saw last year in that Cleveland game, there was a play where he had Brandon Cooks streaking up the sideline. He got middle of the field safety. It was middle of the field close, single high look. So he just threw the 9. And I said into myself, if that's George Pickens, that's a catch. He put it where it needed to be. But it was like Brandon Cooks got pressed a little bit. He wasn't able to restack, and the ball just died. It didn't die. It's actually the ball placement was good. And so I think one of my answers is personnel. I do think that the personnel of it all, with bringing in George Pickens, it helps. It helps in a major. I think that it even helps more so because listen to Clayton Adams talk. He said, and this was during the draft process, he said, if we get tight boxes and people want to come tight, we'll throw it over. But we need to be able to run the ball when we run the ball. And that was part of the Tyler Booker pick. So
this ties in a lot with what Marcus and I have been talking about with the George Pickens pick, is that if you look at him versus Brandon Cooks, right, part of not the issue with Brandon Cooks, because the threat was always there. So it did, still make teams respect that speed down the field. But Dak didn't necessarily have a ton of extraordinary success throwing 9 balls to Brandon Cooks down the field. And I think if you look at it, it's because that's just not the kind of wide receiver that Dak likes to throw the ball down the field to. The kind of wide receiver that Dak likes to throw the ball to, I think I could say right now, usually wears number 13. And it's like, it's those kind of big bodied guys who can get up the field. Now, obviously Gallup is not quite the athlete that George Pickens is. And I think that's why we are all excited. But I think that type of body type, the kind of rangy, wide catch radius folks that can get down the field, that are savvy, that are able to kind of separate at the top of the route down the field, those are the guys that Dak will actually throw the 9 ball to on a regular basis. And I think that's where the passing attack is going to be different, right? There's definitely been times since Cooper and since, prime Gallup that Dak's had guys who could get down the field. But I don't know if there have been guys that have been on this squad that Dak would feel comfortable consistently throwing 9 balls to the way that you feel like hopefully he will with George Pickens.
I want to mention another receiver that you didn't mention. Do you remember back in 2016, 2017, like the pre-Michael Gallup era, where they had Bryce Butler, who was one of these big outside athletic guys? Now, Pickens is a much better player than what Bryce Butler was, but Butler was this height, weight, speed freak who they could put on the outside. And for whatever reason, Dak just trusts those guys more than he trusts a Tavon Austin or a Devin Smith or a Turpin to get down at least on the sideline. Like he'll throw those guys, seam balls, but on the outside, he wants the bigger bodied receivers.
Yeah. Wow. Man. And so this is going to segue into my next question. So the first part of this question, you guys both get an A+. Now let's get deeper. Marcus, Landon, what does it look like? I think that's what I want to know. Is this 11 personnel when you're constantly running out 3 receivers? Is this you're going to have your 2 horses on the edge and you're going to be in 12 with 2 tight ends and you're going to dictate, the defense is going to have to tell you how they're going to defend? And because the reason why I say this, guys, and I think maybe it could be a mix of both. I went back and I really watched every part of George Pickens' game. I don't think he gets enough credit as a route runner. I've seen things that, he's just a deep ball guy or he can't win on end breaker. That's just not the case. I think some of that was the designs and just the scheme or lack thereof in Pittsburgh. Their offensive philosophy was just awful. So not to get back, we've hit George Pickens ad nauseum, but for the Cowboys pass game, Marcus, what do you envision based on what you know who Brian Schottenheimer is?
My hope is that it's multiple, and it's just dependent on the defense they play. Because there might be some weeks where you are better off to spread the field and have 4 receivers out there. But there might be games where, hey, we need to go a little bit heavy. Let's go 2 tight ends, or let's have Landon's guy Hunter Lipke on the field more often, right?
Hunter.
That's my hope, is that Schottenheimer is more open to using different personnel packages. But I think, at least from what we've heard, more motion, more tight splits, getting the guys in a little bit closer to hopefully open up some running games. But I am fascinated to see what Schottenheimer has learned from Mike McCarthy and Pete Carroll. And now that he's having a chance to design his own offense and call the plays and not be hamstrung by 2 really good coaches, Super Bowl winning coaches, what does it look like for Schotty? Because we really haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the cool things about having 2 talented wide receivers is that it actually makes you feel more comfortable about using personnel packages that only feature 2 wide receivers, right?
Yes.
Like, and I think, now you start to have a real conversation about, matchups and who is that 11th person on the offense, need to be dependent on who we're facing, right? Or not even who we're facing, like on the situation. Like, I think that we'll definitely see an uptick. Well, maybe not an uptick because, the personnel groupings last year, once Dak went out, kind of all went out the window, right? And especially as they wanted to run the ball,
because of the quarterback and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's kind of like you have to go back and compare it to 2023 a little bit. I do think that we will see more 12 personnel, just because I think that they probably are going to want to see what they've got in some of these other tight ends, right? I think you saw a little bit of an improvement from Schoonmaker last year. We keep hearing whispers about Brevin Spanford and about his improvement. I know John Stevens Jr. was a guy that made a lot of folks excited about him. They also, got some other undrafted guys that they're going to want to see. So we've been talking a lot about the wide receiver position because, just as a community, because of the pick, because of the trade, and because of the concern before the trade about all the kind of down roster guys and how they were all going to fit. I think part of what we should be looking at is, with this kind of re-emphasis on the run game and potentially looking to maybe pass out of more run formations, do we see more 12 personnel, more 13 personnel, more 21 personnel as they try to kind of get into run formations to help their run game, obviously, but I think also to kind of spring a more efficient passing game, because you often find that some of these run formations are actually the most efficient to pass from.
Well, and Lane, I was going to say, I think the hope for the Cowboys is that somebody develops, whether it's Tolbert, Schoonmaker, name your guy, that they become so good that you can't take them off the field. Like maybe Tolbert in year 4, and which is not all that unusual from a small school receiver to take a couple years to get up to speed. Maybe Tolbert just has that breakout season, and the Cowboys feel like, he's just so much better than Schoonmaker, Lipke, Brevin Spanford. Let's just make him a full-time player, and we'll live out of 11 personnel. If that's not the case and that doesn't happen, then that's when I expect the Cowboys to be more multiple.
So we'll end with this, because this has been such a banger, and I want the replay value to go crazy. I want to say this, Landon, I've been out front. I think that Brevin, because of how he blocks. So I said, who's a second-year player that nobody's talking about that could possibly be a cog in the offense, right? And with Brevin, he's so physical at the point. He's a pest. I was watching the Pittsburgh game, and he's literally pushing Peyton Wilson after the play, linebacker from NC State. Like he's a pest. But he's also a great blocker, and he'll insert, he'll kick you out, he'll do those things. But then when you hear things like he's dominating as a pass catcher, that just makes my eyes and my ears perk up and say, oh, this is interesting. Because now 6'7", where at Minnesota, the issue was drops. Like his passer, grade PFF wasn't great. He had drops. He's going to catch the ball and be, a power forward out there. And you've seen it. This isn't some Rico Gathers, mystery, or no, this guy is actually doing football things. Maybe he can be that forgotten about player in 12 personnel. And then obviously you have the two horses on the edge and doing certain things like that with Cuspus, whatever you want to do with the actual 12 personnel grouping. But I think that who's going to be that player. So I want to ask you guys now, who's the player that maybe could possibly be somebody that we're not talking about? Like, I think people have kind of made points about Jalen Tolbert, but is it a Kevontae Turpin for you, Marcus? Is it a, Hunter Lipke for you, Landon? Who would that one player be that's maybe like, okay, in the passing game, they could give you a little something?
Go ahead, Landon. Go ahead and say your guy. I know you're waiting for it.
I'm not going to give the answer that you think I'm going to give. I'm going to say Kevontae Turpin because I think that, we've kind of been whispering around the fact that he's, he adds an element of speed. And I think that after Pickens, the Pickens trade, it was safe to kind of put the conversations about how much you were going to get out of Turpin as a wide receiver to bed a little bit because you didn't feel like you needed to rely on him. I still think that Turpin is going to be a major part of this offense. I don't, not like wide receiver 2, not wide receiver 3, but he's going to be a guy that this team is going to scheme touches for. Yes. They're going to scheme passes for. They're going to scheme carries out of the backfield for, not just like, jet sweeps. I think we're going to see him continue to line up in the backfield, take some carries out of the backfield. He's going to get the jet sweep stuff that we saw him average, I think 10 yards a carry last year. And had, if you look at his numbers, like had a very high success rate as a wide receiver, was very valuable as a running back. So I just feel like he's a guy that had a ton of success, got a contract extension, was an all-pro last year. I understand he wasn't an all-pro on offense, but was an all-pro last year for what he did with the ball in his hands. I just feel like the Cowboys, just, in spite of having all, the added Pickens aspect to it, the re-emphasis on the run game, I still think that Turpin is going to be a guy that they're going to try to get the ball to in order to create plays in this offense and add even more of an element of speed that may have been missing from this team last year.
I was going to say Brevin Spanfor, but we talked about him a little bit. He averaged 23 snaps a game over the last 8 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
So he's already somebody that's kind of trending up, but I think you're right, Landon, because I have to assume that we're going to just see a bunch of cover 2, right? With George Pickens and CD.
Yes, Marcus.
And I think having someone like Turpin, who you can give, Matt Harmon calls them layup touches too, right? Like jet sweeps, screens, basically like things that Dak doesn't have to think about. Like you just get him the ball and maybe he gets you 5 yards on a pitch. Maybe he gets you 6 yards on a screen. And it's just those kind of plays that he help keep the chains moving, keep you, give you some explosive plays every once in a while. It's clear that he is unbelievably dynamic with the football. And nobody's saying giving him 8-9 touches a game on offense. We're not saying that. But could he get consistently 5 touches a week? I think so. And if with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens and Jake Ferguson, that's all you really need him to do.
Yeah, and you build constraints off of that. Like suddenly now it's a fake jet sweep, and now the whole defense is running that direction, right? So yeah, I think there's lots to just build off of when he isn't even getting the ball if the defense is just scared of him getting the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, and guys, I framed him as a change of pace receiver. And I think that, okay, if you know there's a certain way you have to guard George Pickens. You got to try to get in his face. You can't give him these free releases or he'll run right past you. Kind of the same thing with CD. You know, maybe you have how you want to attack him if you're a corner. Well, then now, okay, just like what he was able to do versus the Texans on that just quick slant, just run away from you, that change of pace, you don't have that on the offense outside of Turpin. And so could he be that guy? Could he take that next step? He's on the team. You paid him. I think that makes a lot of sense. Landon, Marcus, can't thank you guys enough for doing this. I mean, we literally cover so much in the span of 25 minutes. And I think it's a topic that amongst the community isn't being talked about enough, because while we are pretty sure that maybe we may not have the runner per se, we'll have a better run game. The passing part of it, I still think, at least early, Dak's going to have to throw the ball some to get this thing rolling. So I just want to hit that, and I thank you guys for doing that so much.
Of course, anytime.
Thanks for having us.
As always, guys, thank you guys for rocking with me. It's your boy Footsie King. I will put the link to Locked On Cowboys in the description box. I also put Marcus's and Landon's Twitter in the description box. You guys make sure you follow them, share their stuff, and make sure you guys go subscribe to Locked On Cowboys. They do great work. Literally, they have a new topic every day. I'm like, I don't know how these guys come up with this stuff.
Cowboys make it easy, but yeah.
Hey, look, I was just saying, guys, I was worried about this offseason because I'm like, they didn't get the receiver because, normally receivers and skill players will push content, but then bringing George Pickens is like a major shot in the arm.
Cowboys never fail. They always make sure that we have stuff to talk about.
May with the Cowboys is always,
I'm telling you, if we can feed our family. So much love to you guys, Landon, Marcus. Again, I'm going to give you guys flowers. Thank you guys for what you do for the community, and thank you guys for coming on. It's your boy Foots as always. Can you guys see the peace sign? Yep. Thank you guys for liking, sharing, subscribing. Much love. Until next time. Peace.